Good afternoon, all. Dan Sileo here on the National Football Show. Hope everyone is having a spectacular day. Why wouldn't you be? We talk 24/7 football here on the National Football Show. Got a huge day lined up for you today, too, as well. Dave Wannstedt, the Fox Sports NFL analyst, former head football coach of the Pitt Panthers, also the Miami Dolphins and the Chicago Bears. Won 3 Super Bowls in Dallas with Jimmy Johnson as his defensive coordinator, will join us. At the bottom of the hour, we will also talk with Chris Landry, one of the most plugged-in guys possible that you can listen to when it comes to the college game and NFL game. And we'll ask him the teams that really did themselves really well this offseason. Again, it's not just about the NFL draft. It's also today about free agency. So we will talk with Chris Landry at Landry Football. That'll be in hour number 2. Obviously, the story of the day has been Tim Tebow. And I was just telling Krause, my guy, that, hey, thank you, Tim. We now have content galore here because you're getting all kinds of people from every area of the game commenting. Players, ex-players, coaches, analysts. Some like it, some don't. I don't have a problem with Tebow doing this. I was just telling folks, if I was 33 years of age and Jimmy Johnson called me and said, hey, I need a defensive tackle. Do you want to come play here in Dallas for me or down in Miami? I'd be like this, absolutely. I wouldn't think 10 seconds about it, man. It's like getting the golden ticket. Who in their right mind wouldn't want an opportunity if given that opportunity? Remember, you can want the opportunity, but is there somebody out there that will give you that chance to maybe continue your dream? So I have no problem with Tim Tebow going to Jacksonville and potentially making that team. By the way, Tim Tebow signs that contract next week. He's not getting cut. There's a couple angles here that I also want to throw business-wise at you here, that there's a part of this contract that makes me think that this is also about pension. You see, Tim Tebow has 3 years of NFL service. There is a 3-year pension that was just okayed by the new collective bargaining agreement, but you're not fully vested as an NFL player if you have not played 4 years. 4 years is vested fully, which means all benefits for life, your spouse, yourself. You get an annual salary. I think, if I'm not mistaken, for a 4-year vested guy, it's around $56,000 a year for the rest of your life. I think the 3-year one gives you a salary of around $36,000. So there's a business aspect here of this, but you're not fully medically vested under the 3-year deal. So maybe this is hey, you're my guy. You've always been my guy. We're neighbors. We're best friends. And Urban Meyer has always looked out for Tim Tebow. I'm going to get to that here in a minute. So there's a part of me that made me think, okay, he's 33. He's got 3 years in. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think he played 2 years in Denver, and I think he got a year credited with the Jets. I don't think he got credited at all. He was only on the practice squad with New England, and I know he didn't do anything in Philadelphia. Those were all preseason games and such, which meant that you get some type of credit, but you don't get full vested credit when it comes to your NFL pension, and that's a pretty big deal. Because of the new escalators that we have in that collective bargaining agreement, which, by the way, I'm a member of the NFL Players Association, so they send us updates all the time on what the league is negotiating constantly to try to improve benefits for players. This is also an underlier that many people aren't hitting on, that there could be something here. If he gets 1 more year, his salary goes up $20,000 for the rest of his life, and it's a pension that vests him fully when it comes to his medical. So that's part of the dynamic. That's also in this conversation here. He only has to play 4 games going into – he's got to be on the active roster to get a full NFL pension. Right now he's under the 3-year pension. They moved that number back with the new collective bargaining agreement that was agreed with the Players Association and the league a couple years back. So we put that out there to you. Now let me get into Urban Meyer here. I want to be very careful with how I present this because You have to understand, when I was doing my radio show in the state of Florida back in the day, Urban Meyer was the head football coach at Florida. And in the state of Florida, the Florida media, and I mean the statewide sports media, protected him. Because the majority of the sports writers and the editors are all Florida Gators. Whether it's the Gainesville Sun, the Jacksonville newspaper, I think it's called the Democrat, the Tampa Tribune, which is all Gator. You have to go down to Miami. You still have Florida Gator guys that were in the journalism program up in Gainesville that are working for the Miami Herald and the Sun Sentinel. So all over the state, even the Tallahassee newspaper, okay? All of these guys are all Florida Gators. I know, Tallahassee, Florida State, you would think, but not really. All over the state, Pensacola, everywhere. You have a lot of people that went to the journalism school there at the University of Florida. So when Urban Meyer was the head football coach at Florida, he could do no wrong. There was nothing Urban Meyer did while he was the head football coach at Florida. Many people thought he was going to retire a Florida Gator and he was not going to ever go anywhere else. The Gator faithful loved him. The Gator faithful did everything they possibly could to make it comfortable, bought him a house there in Gainesville. His wife enjoyed it. And if it wasn't for him getting sick and having health issues, I really believe that Urban Meyer would still be at Florida. The Gator faithful loved the guy. Jeremy Foley, the former athletic director, wanted him to sign a lifetime contract, and they were willing to give him a lifetime contract. They were paying him in excess of $6 million a year. Meyer was the highest paid coach at that time, even before Saban. So he had a yellow brick road to the bank when it came to being the Florida head football coach, which meant this. He could go anywhere in the state, Tampa, Miami, Satellite Beach, anywhere. And Urban Meyer could pull any kid out of any high school. He was a living god, not legend, god, when he was there at Florida. So now we bring in Tim Tebow into the picture. I want to show you how this relationship really began and why this relationship is where it's at today. It's important because it will show you and it will connect the dots for you on how this relationship got to where Urban Meyer felt very comfortable in giving him an opportunity, okay, and giving him that chance to make the team. And like I said, you know, he's making that squad, folks. I know people in Vegas are putting odds on it that will he make the team. He's making the team, okay? The owner knows this already. There is a seat waiting for him. That's not something that's traditional in the NFL. You don't give out locker rooms and you don't give out chairs in that place because most of the time you have to earn it. All right. So let's go into the history of how we got here with this. And then you can make your own assessment. And quite frankly, it's pretty troubling if you think how those two guys became connected at the hip. Okay. And by the way, you don't think Tebow knows some of the dirt behind the scenes that went on at Florida while Urban Meyer was the head football coach at Florida? Remember something. In the 6 years that Urban Meyer was the head football coach, there were 35 arrests on the team. It was never reported in the media. The media kept it out of the Gainesville Sun. The police department in Gainesville suppressed a lot of that stuff. You know the story that we had coming out of Baylor where the police department would contact the head football coach and everybody in the athletic department would kind of like put it down. They would take care of things behind the scenes. That goes on at a lot of major campuses around the country. Look at all the things that went on at Penn State behind the scenes until finally it came out and there was an indictment on Jerry Sandusky that got public that the press got their hands on. A lot of these college towns, I was trying to make that point on my Twitter page, when the Miami Herald covers the University of Miami versus the Gainesville Sun, you're going to have a different dynamic in that whole process. So let's start with the relationship. Tebow's from Nice High School, which is in Jacksonville. It's Gator country. And Meyer had taken over the football program from a guy named Ron Zook. Ron had done a really great job at tooling the football team and putting a lot of people on that staff and inside the organization when it came to the players. A lot of players were there, man, when he first showed up. I mean, a lot of stud players. You go in there and you take a look at some of the guys that ended up getting drafted. It was a cabinet that was full. So Meyer knew they just had bad coaching. Ron couldn't coach. There was a quarterback by the name of Chris Leake who won the very first national championship for Urban Meyer. Maybe that name doesn't ring a bell to you and you have no idea who he is. It wasn't Tim Tebow who won that first national championship. But you know why the assumption is always made that Tebow won that national title? What would Meyer do? Chris Leake would drive that football team down to the 20-yard line, get it inside the red zone. What would Meyer do? He would pull Chris Leake. Get this. You're pulling the senior who's in the running for the Heisman Trophy. You're pulling him out in the scoring red zone to put a freshman in to score your touchdowns so everyone will remember his name and not Chris Leake's name. Chris Leake never bitched about it, which is a testament to his leadership. He never complained, ever complained. Tebow with the jump passes his freshman year. He scored all those red zone touchdowns for that national championship football team. And that's why people to this day look at it and go, well, that was Tebow's team. No, it wasn't. It was Chris Leake. Chris Leake played from 20 to 20. Tebow played from the 20 in. Here, once again, watch this. Tim Tebow being put in a position to succeed by Urban Meyer. Remember that phrase. Tebow being put in a position to succeed. Right there, right? Leake did all the heavy handling. He did all the heavy work. He did all the tough work, putting that team down in the red zone. He handed it to Tim Tebow to score touchdowns in the red zone. Okay? Just kind of put it on a silver platter for you. Well, Tebow was going to be the starting quarterback the next year, but there was going to be a competition, or we thought there would. There was a guy on the roster. I know you guys don't remember this, but there was a quarterback that was on the Florida Gator roster at the time who was going to compete for that job after Chris Leake had won the national championship. Do you guys remember who that name was? It was Cam Newton. Cam Newton was on that Gator football team. He was in that Gator quarterback room. When they went through spring practice, it was tied. But it was only tied going into the fall camp because Cam had played his ass off in the spring game. Everyone around went like this. Cam should be the starting quarterback over Tebow. Cam's a better player. Turned out to be true. Well, guess what? There was an incident at Florida. Cam got accused of stealing a laptop. A laptop. Years later, turned out not to be true. His roommate went in, got the laptop from a next-door neighbor, a girl, brought it into their locker room. Cam started using it, thought it was his roommate's laptop. They blamed him. No matter what he did, Meyer kicks him off the team for that laptop scene. Remember something. Aaron Hernandez was also on that football team. Aaron Hernandez had been arrested 3 times. But remember what I told you? Aaron Hernandez and the things that he did with the Pouncey twins, that stuff never got public because people in that city, when Gator guys get in trouble, you know who the first people that get a call is? It's not the police. It's the athletic director and the head coach. That's a fact in that city. That's a fact in that state. Aaron Hernandez had been in numerous trouble. There was a scene that he was shooting shotguns off with the Pouncey twins outside of their dorms. Nothing was ever done about it. Meyer turned the other cheek. Percy Harvin got in trouble. Meyer turned the other cheek. Cam couldn't even, he couldn't in any way defend himself. Meyer didn't want him on the team. Meyer wanted that job to go to Tim Tebow. Because you know why? He knew on his football team, you weren't going to win national championships with choir boys. You weren't. And if I have a couple guys get arrested, he ended up having 35. But if I have guys getting arrested, but I have Tim Tebow on my football team, the media is going to look at it like this. Well, okay, there's some issues. And here's my issue. You're calling the University of Miami back in the day Hurricansters. I'm called a gangster to this day. Or how about this, Catholics versus the convicts? You looked at our program as we were like renegade guys. This guy actually had people getting arrested every single month. This guy had people getting arrested. 6 years, 35 guys. Tebow was important. He was massively important. You have to understand. He is so important because he kept the Wolves and he kept any kind of bad publicity off of that program. Meyer knew that. And that's why he was handed that starting position, and they moved Cam out. Cam had to go to junior college, remember? Then he went to national championship at the national college ranks. Then he turns around and he wins the national championship at Auburn when he gets a chance to play at Auburn. And, man, the whole Meyer-Tebow relationship, I was not shocked. I actually expected it. I've expected it the whole time, that Tebow would get an opportunity. Now, again, how I feel about it, Krause was asking me, how do you feel about it? I don't care. Because anybody who has any kind, and the stupid people go, well, he's taking a roster spot away. So what? And if anybody bitches on that Jaguar team, Urban Meyer will cut the guy. Urban Meyer's not going anywhere. This is his team. If a head football coach wants to do that and give a kid an opportunity, the player, shut your face. Well, maybe he'll lose his team. Okay, well then guess what? That guy's cut. Goodbye. See you later. This ain't like baseball and basketball where you can bitch about the head coach in the front office. You can't do that in the NFL because the contracts aren't guaranteed. And guys you think are going to really raise their voice in a place that hasn't won, worry about winning and worry about your own job before you worry about Tebow's job. Now, look, if you're on the Buccaneers and Tebow's brought in, that's a conversation that Brady and all them guys who had won a championship. But the Jaguars suck. You need all the exposure you possibly can get. So all the media guys going, well, and what they're trying to do is turn it into a black-white thing. Would a black guy get it on? Who cares? These guys are boys. Always will be. These guys have gone through the thick and thin and through the winning. Shay Khan, the owner, goes, I think it's a great idea. So do I. How many times do we talk about the Jaguars during the regular season? How many times have you ever talked about that crappy-ass organization? The only time we ever talk about that crappy-ass organization is guess when? Draft time, off season. Them dumping somebody, right? Getting rid of Calais Campbell or getting rid of guys like Leonard Fournette, right? Or coach getting fired, Doug Marrone getting blown out, Tom Coughlin not getting it done. How many times have you ever really talked Blake Bortles sucking out loud? How many times have you truly ever heard anybody bringing up the Jags in a good note? Now you have this, Trevor Lawrence. Oh, and here's the new one. Well, he's going to create a lot of issues for Trevor. No, he's not. He's not going in as a quarterback. He's going in as a tight end, a backup one at best, and he's going in, quite frankly, just to be a guy. Well, what about the fans? Absolutely. The Gator fans are the craziest fans I've ever been around. And by the way, the loudest stadium I've ever played in is Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, also known as the Swamp. I've never been in any place louder in my life than in that place. Those college stadiums compared to the NFL, and I've played pretty much in all the NFL stadiums, not the new ones, but more like, the old vet. It could get loud. RFK rocked a lot. You can get that baby going like a swing. You're sitting there going, is the stadium moving? Really, you're like this. Lambeau can get loud. Okay, Arrowhead is probably the loudest stadium I've ever played in. I've never played in a louder stadium than Arrowhead. Just absolutely off the charts because those old AFL stadiums are like right on top of you. and you have little sideline space. And when you have that, that means you can hear everything the fans are doing, and it's loud as hell. It's funny, the new stadiums, you're pushed further away from the stadium and the guys with the new buildings, but the old buildings, you are right on top of one another. And Florida, you're right, like you're turning around, you're looking up right there into the stands there at Florida. Loud as hell, and crazy as hell. So Urban Meyer losing the locker room, I mean, you're crazy, because he's never going to lose that locker room. Because if there's somebody in that locker room that doesn't agree with the way they're doing business, he's just going to fire that guy. He's just going to fire that dude, man. He's never going to lose the locker room. He's never going to. So, in essence, to come full circle here, that relationship goes back to Tebow being recruited when he was living in Jacksonville. And his path at Florida was paved by Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer owes a lot to Tebow, a lot to him, okay? It was clearly one of the reasons that he got the Ohio State job was the job that he did in Gainesville, not the job he did at Utah, the job he did at Gainesville, handling all those gigantic egos and that great football team. He won 2 national championships there. Don't forget that. And he did it with a bunch of guys that were questionable in character. There were a bunch of guys that were blown off that football team. Just a bunch of guys, okay? So losing the locker room, please. All right, we're going to catch up with our friend Dave Wannstedt from the NFL on Fox, and we're going to talk to him about all of this. We'll get his thoughts on some of the offseason teams. I do want to hit on one thing here. There was a comment that was made by the Packer general manager, Brian Gunst. I want to tell you what he said. I want to do that. We'll do that next. You keep it right here on the National Football Show.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. Doc and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
The light from a star can take millions of years to reach Earth. So when you look at a star, you're looking back in time. But I see the future. I see exploration and courage. I see my country finding new horizons out there. And I see giant leaps making a comeback. I see myself. The future is where I'll make history.
D-A-T-L-E-S-E-O! Jody Mack, the legendary sports talker, joins forces with NFL insider John McMullen. Start your morning with Johnny Mack and Jody Mack across the JAKIB Media Network.
Welcome back to the National Football Show. And I've got to show my next guest something that he gave me with Jimmy Johnson back in the day. Follow me over here. Game ball against Florida State. Game ball against Cincinnati. Game ball against the Gators. Game ball against East Carolina. Game ball. Jesus criminy, man. I must have played with somebody. And Coach Wannstedt.
It was all, Danny, it was all coaching. I used to design those defenses so you could be the only guy making the tackle.
I used to tell George Meyer, Coach, when he was getting ready for these TV games, me and Jerome used to look over at him and go, okay, this TV game, know this, we're running around every block we possibly could, okay? We've got to get in the backfield to make plays here. So, George, you better buckle up here, Hoss. Jerome would go, he's right. Great times, right, Coach?
Oh, fantastic. Yep, absolutely. No, they were memorable moments from a standpoint of the players that we had a chance to coach. And I can remember NFL scouts would come through and all they talked about was how hard our players worked. And, Jimmy had those long practices and it didn't faze you guys. And they just talked about how committed that these players were to doing whatever it took to win. And I think obviously the results speak for themselves.
Coach, those legendary inside drills, you guys would always go like this, one-on-ones. Man, we went ones versus ones, and there were coaches from all over the country. I mean, Paterno and all these guys. And I remember hearing those guys going like this. How do you guys get those guys to play so hard all the time? And I used to tell everybody, I got Cortez Kennedy and Russell Maryland behind me. What are you, nuts? I'm not taking a day off. These guys, I'm going to be Wally Pip if I take the day off here. It was just so many great guys behind us. But, Coach, I talked to Coach Johnson the other day about this. As a player, you go back and you look at the coaching staff, too. Not only did we have the greatest coach, only did we have the greatest talent, but Dave Campo, yourself, Butch, Tony Wise, who could be the greatest O-line coach of all time. I mean, Axe, Brodsky, all those dudes. And what people don't know out there, all those people went to Dallas and won 3 Super Bowls. I mean, it just shows you how great that staff was. Have to be proud of that as well, Coach.
Well, it was. And, Jimmy deserves all the credit. I mean, he knew what he wanted in players, yourself, in the group, and he knew what he wanted in coaches. And then he gave us an opportunity to, hey, you can take this thing as far as you want to go, and you can be as good as you want to be, just as if he told the players. And so I think there was a real incentive working there that the harder we worked as coaches, just like the players, the better we would become. And the more games that we won, the more opportunities that we would get as coaches, just like the players would, and opportunities go to the NFL like yourself. So I think Jimmy, he really had a great foundation, a great culture, not just for the players, but also for the coaches that worked for him, and it worked.
Absolutely, Coach. I always tell people it was Camelot. It was just our trainers were even some of the best. Let's get into what happened today, or what's been happening the last couple days here. Coach, everybody has relationships when it comes to signing players, when it comes to hiring coaches. Your take on Urban Meyer giving Tebow, I'm going to bury the lead here. I don't really care. Okay, he's not going in there to compete for the quarterback job. He's a guy from Nice High School. He's from the area. He's a Gator legend. I know he's been out of the game for a while, but your take on this, how do you see that whole thing playing out in Jacksonville and what he wants to do with Tebow?
Well, I see a very similar philosophy that we had when we first went to the Dallas Cowboys. If you remember, our last 2 picks, I think, in our first round were Randy Shannon and Rod Carter, 2 of our linebackers. And neither one, Randy's been a successful coach, but and Rod now is doing great in his professional life. But they were outstanding college players, but really they weren't NFL players. And they knew it, and we knew it. But, Jimmy's philosophy and our philosophy was we wanted to get as many guys around us that understood what we were trying to do from an effort standpoint, from a discipline standpoint, from a scheme standpoint that we could. And so I see Urban Meyer now kind of go in that direction between Florida guys and Ohio State guys. The Tim Tebow situation, I really thought that he would hire Tim Tebow as an assistant coach in some capacity. I don't know what, assistant quarterbacks, offensive assistant, get him started. I think that he would be a great addition to Urban's staff. Boy, playing tight end, though, I mean, you know, that's a whole different animal. And you know this, I mean, you know, the only time he was getting hit as a quarterback was when somebody got turned loose or he was scrambling and they tackled him. He kind of sees it coming. He can protect. Now the first play, he's going to have to put his hand on the ground and try to knock some 260-pound defensive end off the line of scrimmage. So I don't see it happening. I don't see it working. I don't know. No, I haven't talked to Urban. I don't know what his thinking is. Maybe they're going to use them, you know, stretched out away from the line of scrimmage, and he's not going to be an inline blocker. I don't know how they're going to use him. So I don't really get that part of him, but I do get that Urban wants him as being part of the program when he's trying to establish a culture. I get that part.
You know, Coach, I had never thought about that, and I think you have hit on it here on why he's there. I'm going to give people the little insight there because Coach Landry had signed me prior to you guys leaving me, and I was in the room. And I'll never forget when Tom got fired. I was in the room when Coach Landry got fired. Tex walked in. They all walked out. Every single guy, from Crawford Kerr to Ed Jones to Randy White, looked over at me and said, what does this guy Jimmy Johnson expect? And I'll never forget that, Coach. Yeah. I remember Crawford going like this to me, going, well, here's what these guys are going to do. They're going to come in here. 90% of you guys, including me, won't be in here next year because what they're going to do is they're going to come in here and fire everybody that has the jocks to the socks. And they're going to find people that they're going to go forward with. And let me tell you something. They don't give a rat's ass about anything but winning. And they may have some bumps and bruises. You may think but this is all about committed to winning. And I told Jimmy the story about Troy. We go out to dinner at Thousand Oaks, Coach. He goes like this. Oh, so first thing he does is he drafts Steve Walsh. I turned and looked at him and went, you think that guy's going to be the starting quarterback under Jimmy Johnson's reign here? And I love Steve. He's a Cane. He's my brother. I love Steve. He signed that guy, drafted that guy as an asset to trade. I'm telling you. Don't kid yourself. Troy's like, bull. And I went, I'm telling you, this guy doesn't care anything about winning. So the more I kept telling him, then we brought in a couple other, like you said, we had a couple other Miami guys in there, and they kept asking us what it's like to play with you. I totally think he's bringing guys like that in there, Coach, to set the culture.
Absolutely. There's no question about it. And, you know, the luxury that we had, I mean, we were so far behind from a talent standpoint starting off. You know, I remember going into our first defensive meeting, Dan, you were there, and I think there were 4 or 5 players that were older than I was.
Yes. Randy White, Ed Jones, I mean, Tom Rafferty on the offensive side.
Emerson Walls, Michael
all them
Downs.
Guys.
Yeah.
All those guys were left over from Coach Landry, right? They were all all the guys who had won the Super Bowl.
Absolutely. And that's what happens. And so Jacksonville has been, you know, it's not a situation, and it's, you know, where you got a group of veteran players that have won for you, like you said, a Super Bowl, and now you just don't want to get rid of these guys because they've been loyal to you and they're winners. Where I think Jacksonville is a little different situation because they've been trying to win after year, and so, you know, I don't know. I mean, I think that that how many of these guys that Urban's gathering from Ohio State and from Florida, how many will make the team? I don't know. We were able to keep Randy Shannon for a year, and we were able to keep some of these players because we didn't have the depth. So it'll be interesting to see once they get through the mini camps, and maybe Urban's thinking is, you know what, if I can just get these guys through quarterback school and mini camps and training camp, even if I got to cut them, they're going to be doing enough things the way I want them done that it's going to rub off on the rest of the players. That could be his thinking, and I could get that point.
Absolutely. You guys were bringing in cut-up tapes of Kane's G defense, and get this. I had Ed Too Tall Jones looking at me going, is that what he's trying to do on a 3 technique? You guys are over on a shade. And I'll never forget that. You guys, we brought in all the cut-up tapes from our defensive front, and guys were asking me questions. Coach, let me move on to this one here with Urban. I'm wondering, and how much of an advantage is it that he's recruited these guys all around the country when it comes to the draft? Because when you guys came into the NFL, you guys recruited everybody in the country. Everybody, and you knew everybody. And I always thought that was a massive advantage in how you guys were able to make the trades and seemingly always land on a guy who was going to be productive for the team because you had recruited the guy. Maybe you didn't get him to go to Miami, but you guys knew who he was. How much of an advantage is that for Urban?
Well, that's a great point, and I remember, I think the cuts were Tuesday morning, the waiver wire would come out at 4:00. We would have a staff meeting. And that first year, and I could see Urban doing that. And on that 4:00 staff meeting, everybody had the cut sheet from around the whole NFL. And there were hundreds of players there. And we would go through every name. And we would say, okay, and maybe it was a Tony Wire. Butch Davis said, hey, Coach, you remember him? Now, we recruited him. This guy was a player when he came. So we would be looking at all the players cut. And for the first couple of years, we were able to target some guys that helped us win. Urban will do the same thing. And then the other point is, I mean, right now, I've been out of the coaching circle for 10 years now. And, there's a lot of young guys, a lot of new guys that are in the league that I don't know personally, okay? Urban knows all the college coaches.
Yeah.
So if there's a player that there's a discrepancy about, boy, wonder if he would help us. Wonder if he is fast enough because he doesn't look like it on tape in the preseason game. He's going to be able to call that head coach, and he's going to get a straight answer from the guy. So I think, there's an advantage of recruiting the guys, like you said, Dan, but also a big advantage of still being in that inner circle of college coaches where you know who you can trust and you know who you can call and where you're going to get good, solid information.
A couple last questions for you, Coach. I want to throw this at you here. And, I think everybody's a little bit off on this Aaron Rodgers story. And this is how I see it. And tell me if you agree or disagree. I think it's more than just Jordan Love being drafted a year ago. Now, Troy had a problem with Steve, so maybe that's a small part of it. But if I'm him, Coach, I'm 26-6 over 2 years. I've gotten to 2 AFC championship games. I saw how you had to divorce with Brett. And then last year, I saw a defensive gaffe going into the halftime where you gave up 7 points going into half. That's a coaching blunder there, not having the proper defense. You give Brady 7, and then, Coach, speaking of Brady, you're in the NFC championship game. You're hosting it at Lambeau Field. You don't go for it on 4th down. There's 2 minutes left in the game, and the coach gives it back to the guy who's got 6 of those awards and 6 of those trophies. I said this sitting on my couch going, you'll never get the ball back. That guy's won too many of those games. Is it just everything encompassing that has led to where we are with this relationship?
I think so. I think you're right on point, Dan. I think it's a combination of, Russell Wilson did the thing earlier in the season, really. If you think about the Seattle thing, he started up a little bit, and I think that probably got Aaron thinking. He's probably looking and saying, "Whoa, we really didn't do much from a draft standpoint or receiver standpoint in free agency to help me. I don't want to become Tom Brady stuck in New England with not enough weapons." There's probably a little bit of that. There might be a little bit of a personality conflict. I don't know, between him and the GM. I don't think it's him and the head coach. And, and he's from California. He played at Cal. He went to prep school, whatever, out there in California. So, I think there's just a lot of things, and you hit it on the head. And I think, all it takes is one comment, and then this thing starts snowballing, and that's where we're at right now. I hate to see it. I personally would say, you know what, Aaron, we love you. We're going to do everything we can to help you. I mean, I think you got to smooth this over. I would not trade him. I mean, if you want to sit and give up $30 million, God bless you. You know what I mean? But we're not trading you at this point. You're our quarterback, and we'll do everything we can to help you. They might extend his contract. They might give him more money. I hope he finishes his career in Green Bay. I really do.
Final question for you, Coach. You just mentioned Brady. I'm wondering if this is just going to be a one-off, or do you think that this is going to be a common theme now with these big-time priced quarterbacks like Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, on what Brady did? Brady played the power hand in New England. He saw there wasn't anything left in the cabinet, and he just went like this. Hey, guess what? I'm never going to win here. We don't have the assets. Banged up Julian Edelman. Gronk's out. You're seeing the team kind of disintegrate around him. And he put his hand up, Coach, and set him out. Then he goes to Tampa, and he ends up winning a Super Bowl, and he kind of played a power play. You think this is going to be more of a common theme that we're going to see with the quarterback position, or do you think that's just a Brady deal?
Well, it's kind of started with the NBA, with the players demanding trades. I think that's where it all kind of started, to be honest with you. But, the big difference is Tom Brady's contract was up.
You're right.
And Aaron Rodgers got what? What's he have, Danny? 2 years?
2 years.
2 years left.
2 years with an option.
To me, that's a huge difference. And so I didn't see Tom Brady being a power play. I just think that he looked at everything and he had a feel of how much of a commitment that they wanted to make to him moving forward. And he didn't like it. And he made a decision. So I think the way Brady did it, guys should do that if that's how they feel and if that's the situation they're in. I look at Aaron Rodgers' situation completely different.
Coach, I want to leave you with this. I tell people all the time, they ask me about you, and I go, Aaron Donald, Darrelle Revis, I can name you 50 dudes that this guy was responsible for recruiting that could be Hall of Fame type guys. I mean, you got to miss that a little bit, Coach, being around the fellas and being like
I do.
able to go and knock on doors.
And I've been pretty healthy, pretty blessed. I mean, I got the energy to do it. I know I could do it. I'm fortunate, but I got grandkids now that they're as bad as you were. I got to coach these kids. I got to spend time with these kids. I got to get them to go to class, just like you. When I'm talking to my 14-year-old grandson, I feel like I'm talking to you when you were in college.
Coach, we're in that pit locker room. We killed that team score-wise, and Ironhead ran on us. No one wanted to be there. It was raining. And I just said this. I go, we're soaking wet, frozen cold. We're sitting there, and all of a sudden you come walking in. You son of a gun. You gave up 250 yards to flip the damn table. Everything goes, Gatorade's flying everywhere. I'm sitting over at Jerome, and I go like this. We did win the game, right?
Hey, I tell you what. God, thank God, you and Jerome, thank God for Benny Blades, our pro free safety. Benny Blades, if it wasn't for Benny being a top 10 pick and a great player, we might have lost that game because you and Jerome didn't tackle anybody. George Meyer didn't tackle. Benny Blades was our safety, if people can visualize this, and he was making every tackle.
Man, that was, and you were so pissed because it's your alma mater. And you're like this. Kajemi didn't even play, you sons. Coach, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right, Danny. Love you, buddy. Bye-bye.
Love you too, Coach. Thank you so much. Dave Wannstedt from NFL on Fox. Really great catching up with him, man. He knows everybody, and he knows every story on the planet. All right, we'll take a quick timeout, and we will hit on Aaron Rodgers. Keep it right here on the National Football Show.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
The light from a star can take millions of years to reach Earth. So when you look at a star, you're looking back in time. But I see the future. I see exploration and courage. I see my country finding new horizons out there. And I see giant leaps making a comeback. I see myself. The future is where I'll make history.
Jody Mack, the legendary sports talker, joins forces with NFL insider John McMullen. Start your morning with Johnny Mack and Jody Mack across the JAKIB Media Network.
Welcome back, National Football Show with your boy Dan Sileo. Still to come next hour, Chris Landry from Landry Football. College and pro. We're going to talk to one of the best insiders when it comes to covering both the college game and also the NFL game. That'll be in the next hour. By the way, just a quick programming note. We're also going to have on the show tomorrow on Wednesday. And we are an exclusive football show here, but I want you to hear the story of Charlie Ward. You guys remember who Charlie Ward is? He's the man that won the national championship in college at Florida State, won a Heisman Trophy. Dennis Green wanted to draft him in the first round, and you know what he decided to do? I'll go play with the Knicks. Why did you decide to not play in the NFL? Here was a dual sport guy. Get his thoughts, too, on what he thinks of this Tebow story going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. And we're going to talk with, how about this? If I told you 7-time All-Pro, 7 times, I told you he had won 5 conference championship rings. He lost 5 Super Bowls. This guy's one of the greatest college players in the history of college and one of the greatest players in the history of the NFL. And he's not in the Hall of Fame. Why? We're going to talk to Cornelius Bennett, Biscuit, get his thoughts on the Bills. He works with their pregame show and why that guy's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Biscuit's one of my favorite people. And we'll talk with him and we will get his thoughts on the Bills, why he's not in the Hall of Fame. What's the prejudice? Is it because he lost those 5 Super Bowls? Remember, he was on those Bills teams that lost those 4 straight Super Bowls. And then he went to Atlanta, and he lost that Super Bowl when he was a member of the Falcons to the Broncos and that John Elway football team. So we'll talk with Cornelius Bennett. Guy should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. One of the absolutely greatest people I've ever known and one of my dearest friends is Biscuit Bennett. Legendary player. Should be, like I said, in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. All right. Let's transition into this with the other topic, obviously, that's been dominating the NFL, and that's the Packers. So let's do this here. Let's play along here with this. Let's say the GM and Mark Murphy, the president of the Packers, decide to move Aaron Rodgers, okay? And they move him. Trade him to Denver, get all the assets, what have you. Do you know what the collateral damage that will be moving forward when it comes to prospective free agents? Maybe a coach? Jesus, man. You pulled the rug out from a guy who had 3 years remaining, who just won an MVP? I don't know if that's a place for me. Would you pull the rug out for me? You see, what you're doing now is you're watching the behavior of how the Packers handle people. Look at how they handled Mike Holmgren. Look how they handled Mike McCarthy. Look at how they handled Brett Favre. Look at how they're handling Aaron Rodgers. Do you see a theme here? Why is that? There's no owner. It's by committee. And how many times do you know, and how many times you can't win football games by committee? The reason that the Green Bay Packers don't make the right decisions when it comes to coaching, when it comes to personnel decisions, do you know why? It's by committee. You're telling me for the last 30 years, 30, what's Rodgers been there, 16? How many was Favre there? 30 years. You won 2 Super Bowls. 30 years with Favre and Rodgers. 2. They're not winning it again. There's going to be 2 you talk about underachieving. Joe Montana and Steve Young won 5 Super Bowls with that back-to-back Hall of Fame tandem. The Packers fall over themselves because it's by committee. Why do you think, again, here, and you can't win with front office people meddling inside your building. The front office is there to be a help to the coaching staff and the head coach, most notably. Anytime you have a front office that wants to be out front and center, traditionally always leads to poor decisions. Hence the Eagles and Cowboys. The Eagles and Cowboys, why do you think the Washington team thing won? Because you know why? You had a stable coach in Ron Rivera. Riverboat Ron went in there and steadied the water. Mike McCarthy's kind of showing his colors. Doug Peterson was getting railed by the owner and the general manager every week. This is after the guy won a Super Bowl. Instead of evaluating the guy at the end of the year, you're evaluating him after the end of every game. Let the coaches coach. That's what Dave Wannstedt just got through saying. You know, one of the reasons that Jimmy Johnson was the greatest coach in my lifetime, and me being around, that includes Tom Landry and all the great coaches that I've been around, Jimmy never got in anyone's ass during a game. Never. He waited for the week. His job of coaching was Monday through Friday. On Sunday, it was the assistant coaches and our job. Jimmy was the quietest guy on the sidelines you can ever see. There were no rah-rah speeches. There were none of that stuff. All that stuff came from Butch Davis, Dave Wannstedt, all them guys. Norv, Campo. All those guys turned out to be NFL head coaches too, by the way. And all those guys coached on the sidelines. And Jimmy was evaluating us as well as them, like Dave just said. He made the environment like that. Anytime there was no and in Dallas, Jimmy had complete control of the football team, personnel-wise. That was the reason he left the Miami Hurricanes. He wasn't going to leave the University of Miami. Jimmy had been offered numerous NFL opportunities, but he was never going to leave unless he had full control of the personnel decisions. And when Jerry gave him full control of the personnel decisions, he had just won a national championship in college. If Jimmy had stayed at Miami, he'd have been what Nick Saban is today. Everyone knows it. I mean, he completely would have won he would have won way more national titles. But he goes, I get complete control. And when he had complete control, he turned the entire thing around. Bill Walsh had complete control of the 49er dynasty. He worked with a guy by the name of John McVay. He worked with Ed DeBartolo. And then when Carmen came in, Carmen got in the way. Carmen started really actually poisoning the water. As many people think Carmen Policy was the guy that was really the architect for those great 49er teams, he wasn't. He was the caretaker of what John McVay, Ed DeBartolo, and Bill Walsh had put together. And when Bill left and they put Seifert in, that's how Carmen started parachuting in. And before you know it, Carmen had destroyed the entire franchise. By the time he walked out the building, the 49ers were in ruin. He was supposed to keep it going. He never did. He ends up moving on, gets part ownership of the Cleveland Browns, turned that thing into a nightmare. They lit that thing on fire. When your coach has complete autonomy to have personnel decisions, there's not a guy, get this, there's not a guy in Jacksonville who's going to have more knowledge of every single kid who's going to be cut this coming fall. There's not going to be a coach that doesn't know every single guy that's on every single roster, more so than Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer, I will give him credit for this. I'm not a big fan of Urban Liar, but what I am a fan of is that he does his homework. Urban Meyer is a guy who works his ass off. And Urban Meyer is a guy who recruited his ass off. When you look at his coaching percentage wins, and you look at what that guy did at Utah, even Bowling Green for that matter, then at Florida, then at Ohio State, there is no question I think Urban Meyer is going to be a success at Jacksonville. I'll get back to Rodgers and the collateral damage if he has moved on. But don't kid yourself. The only problem that Urban Meyer is going to have is you got to remember something about a college mentality as a head coach and a NFL head coach when it comes to mentality. When you're a college coach, you're the czar. You're the czar of the program. Everything goes through you. Even if the committee or your coaching table doesn't like it, you have complete say. When you're in the NFL, your coaching staff has the least amount to say because you got to go upstairs and deal with the GM. And get this, who do you think the GM's going to be more loyal to? The personnel department or the coach? It's a dynamic because you know why? The personnel department is a reflection of the people that he puts on the roster. Those are basically the guys that he hires. So those personnel guys are going to have, okay, those personnel guys are going to have more of a relationship with the GM than they are with the head coach. Now, some general managers want to hire assistant coaches. That's when you're way over your lines. A GM like Howie Roseman that hires the scouts and the assistant coaches should never be in the building. That's getting in the way of the coach. You're in the way. That's why many of those dynamics have too many voices chirping. You got too many people in the corners talking. Did you see that guy? That guy shouldn't be starting. Why is he starting that guy? Hey, dude, it's not your decision. It's the head coach's decision. If you want to be the head coach, Howie, go on the sidelines and put a headset on. Instead of using him as a shield and calling Doug Peterson a sorry-ass coach, hey, dude, you got in his way. Facts. You're just as responsible for the Eagle failure as he is. But you see, that's not what GMs do. GMs use that dude. You see, you hire a coach to fire him because eventually you're going to have to make a scapegoat out of him. Okay? So again, circling back now to the Packers here. Rodgers leaves. That place is not going to be a destination. It's all, watch this, Green Bay, Wisconsin, with a stiff quarterback. Count me out. When Reggie White signed that free agent contract and he went to Green Bay and he signed for that $9 million, everybody, and I'll tell you this, there's no way Reggie White would have left Philadelphia if Jerome Brown was still alive. He would never have left. I know that for a fact. Reggie told me that. He would never have left. They would have stayed there. They would have tried to keep it going. And especially if they would have kept Rex Ryan there, that whole thing, or they would have kept Buddy Ryan there, excuse me. Rex was on the coaching staff, though. Okay, and I think Jeff Fisher was the D-line coach. If I'm not mistaken, I think Jeff Fisher was Reggie and Jerome's defensive line coach. I went up there a few times, and I talked to those guys. He would never have left. Reggie would never have left. Reggie told me that. He would never have left Philadelphia if Jerome Brown was alive, and they would have kept that defensive tack with Clyde Simmons and Seth Joyner and all them dudes. Never. Andre Waters was one of the best defenses in NFL history. I think they had the trifecta. Least amount of yards given up, least amount of points, least in total yards and all that stuff. I mean, they were fantastic. Led the NFL against the run, the pass, everything. And they lost because they didn't have the offensive skill set people on that other side of the ball. But he never would have left. And now you're talking about if you get rid of Rodgers, you're going to have to go out. You think Jordan Love's going to attract wideouts? I don't think so. I don't think so, Haas. That ain't working. That's going to be collateral damage. That's what you also – okay, so you get rid of him. You think people are going to want to come and play for a guy like Jordan Love, the kid that I got from Utah State, and by the way, who I happen to think may be a stiff. You've seen 100 practices with the kid. Either he can play or he can't play. You got to figure that out. All right. Carson Wentz's success in Indy will be what? I'll tell you next. You keep it right here on the National Football Show.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with JAKIB and Krause every Saturday night from 6 to 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
The light from a star can take millions of years to reach Earth. So when you look at a star, you're looking back in time. But I see the future. I see exploration and courage. I see my country finding new horizons out there. And I see giant leaps making a comeback. I see myself. The future is where I'll make history.
D-A-T-L-E-S-E-O! Jody Mack, the legendary sports talker, joins forces with NFL insider John McMullen. Start your morning with Johnny Mack and Jody Mack across the JAKIB Media Network.
Hour 2 here on the National Football Show. Your boy Dan Sileo. Chris Landry from Landry Football will be with us in this hour. We'll talk both college and pro with him. You know what's crazy when you think about the upcoming college football season? Watch this. Who are your top 5 teams? Jesus criminy. I could go back 20 years and it's the same teams. Clemson, Georgia, Bama, LSU, Oklahoma, Ohio State. Same 6. College football is becoming boring. It's going to be one of those 6 teams win the national championship. Oklahoma, Ohio State, Bama, Clemson, Georgia, LSU, some team from the SEC. You're never going to see a team from the Pac-12. You're never going to see a team from the Big 12. Those teams don't play a tough enough schedule, friends. The year that TCU and Baylor went undefeated, the committee looked at them guys and went like this. And by the way, anytime you do anything by committee, it's always a failure, like I said. Because you know what? And quite frankly, I think that committee thing is awful. It's like a beauty pageant. Well, I think Ohio State is so sexy looking. No, Clemson is sexier looking. And I'm like, who cares what they look like? Who are the best teams in the country? That's why the NFL playoffs are the best. You could be a 9-7 team and win a Super Bowl. That's why I've never got that. You don't have to be undefeated to win a national championship. You got to be playing the best football at the right time, beating the right teams. Plain and simple. It's got nothing to do with being undefeated. But they make that such a priority that what it does is it skews the national championship picture. You're trying to tell me a team that finishes in 3rd place in the SEC couldn't wax any team in the – how about this? I could tell you this. I could pick the 3rd best team in the Southeastern Conference. Let's just say Georgia. Would they be favored against any team in the Pac-12 for a title game? Yeah. Big 12, Oklahoma, yeah. Big 10, yeah. I would take Georgia over Ohio State, yeah. That's the third best team. The third best team. And sometimes the second best team. Texas A&M is going to be a good football team this year with Dumbo Fisher. I think College Station is going to have a good football team. They'll rise up. Somebody in the SEC will rise up, but that's the only time you see outliers. Big 12, Texas. How about this? Do you know that Texas on that entire coaching staff went out and recruited 57 five-star guys, and they suck. How could you have 57 five-star guys and not play for a national title every year? Tom Herman stunk, and he stunk the place up. That's why they went to the Southeastern Conference and got Sarkisian to go in there and be the head coach. And that's a beautiful thing about Nick Saban, too. You know what I love about Saban and his rehab program? He's got Bill O'Brien now on that coaching staff. He had Steve Sarkisian after that whole thing. Fight on! When he got drunk at that USC mixer, I guess. I love Saban. He gives everybody who has made a dent in their fender an opportunity to resurrect their career, and they do. Coach at Maryland is another example of that. Had issues, I think his name was Loxley, had issues when he was at New Mexico, I think it was. And that guy ended up resurrecting his career. Now he's got a head coaching gig. All because of Nick Saban and his rehab program. Steve Sarkisian getting a head coaching job at Texas? Are you freaking kidding me? Do you know how big that gig is? There's 2 programs in the United States that generate the amount of money that no other program, including Alabama or any team in the SEC, generates. Do you know that Texas Longhorn program generates $165 million a year? Just the football program. And I think A&M is more. When you go to College Station, you know that hotel that's right across the street from Kyle Field, and you stay the night there? It's like $15,000 to the alumni to stay in that hotel, which all goes to the football program. Dude, there's enormous money in Texas for those 2 programs, Texas A&M and Texas. You're never going to get around it. So I think A&M's going to – why do you think Jimbo Fisher left Florida State? He left Florida State where he had won a national title. He had a boatload of kids to recruit in the state of Florida. And you know what he said? I'm out of here, man. You're going to give me $6.5 million to go coach A&M? I mean, yeah, give me it. And they gave him a guaranteed $70 million contract. Who wouldn't take that deal? I mean, you've got an NFL contract. And before I move on again to the college ranks and the top 5 and all this stuff a little bit about it, know this. If you're a big-time college coach, why would you ever leave for the NFL? You know how dumbasses say this on the radio or they say it on TV? They'll do this. Well, they want to challenge themselves. Challenge yourselves. Are you crazy? Do you know if you lined up the top 20 college football jobs and you looked at the salaries, Kirk Ferentz, for instance, the guy at Iowa, he makes $5.5 million a year. You know, he makes more money than the head coach at, I would think, even the Eagles. He probably makes more money than the head coach of the Eagles, the Chargers. I would think the Cardinals. Guy makes 5.5, and he's like the 20th highest paid guy. I mean, Lincoln Riley, you know what was really hilarious? Was like there was a radio station in Philadelphia barking that Lincoln Riley was in conversation with the Eagles on being the head coach there. The biggest lie you could ever imagine. Frank Reich kind of cleared the air yesterday about that. You know why that was never happening? You really think that the Eagles are going to pay Lincoln Riley $7.5 million? He's making 6.8 now. He's got a 10-year escalator that if he stays at Oklahoma 10 years, he gets a $6 million bonus. Bob Stoops collected that. Bob Stoops made $75 million being the head coach of the Oklahoma Sooners. Why in the world would he leave Norman, a tax-free state, to go listen to some dumbass like Howie Roseman Tell me who to play on Sundays when I am the king of my own moat, making $7 million a year. They bought me a house. I fly around in a private jet. I'm like a superstar. It's the same thing with John Calipari at Kentucky. Why do you think he never leaves Kentucky? He flies around in a private jet. He makes $8 million a year. To do what? Coach the Nets? For what? These college jobs today, friends. You're not going to get these guys pried out from under those bankrolls that they're making now at the college game. Nick, you know who the highest paid coach in football is in America today? It is Belichick. He makes 12.5. You know who the second is? It's Saban, 11.5. Nick Saban makes $11.5 million a year coaching kids who don't make a cent. Why in his craziest world? Oh, because, it wasn't really that successful when he was at the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, because you know what? You had committees in that whole room. And let's not forget, he was 2-1 against Nick. I think he was 2-1 or maybe 2-2 against Belichick when he was coaching in that division, the AFC East. I forget, something like that. I know he wasn't underwater. When I say underwater, that's like under 500. And it was just a poor quarterback decision that it ended up leading. Remember, they went for Dante Culpepper, and it was the right pick. Culpepper had a hurt knee, not a hurt arm. And Breeze had a hurt arm. Dr. Andrews had to put that guy together like he was Humpty Dumpty. No one thought he was going to be that guy when he got to New Orleans, not even the Saints. Nobody thought that. He'd become the all-time leading yardage passer in NFL history. Yeah, okay, yeah. Unless you're talking to Bill Polian, who likes to change the history of his resume. Yeah, I had a first – that dumbass went around going, I have a first-round grade on Tom Brady. No, you didn't. Stop lying. I love when – see, when you're on TV, people get to change the narrative. Just watch some of the, news talk shows. They try to change. Jerry tries to change the narrative when it comes to how the Cowboy dynasty was built. I love how people try to do. Jerry's always like, nothing went by me when we won those Super Bowls. Then why haven't you done it again? If you're so brilliant, how come it's been 27 years since you've even reached an NFC title game? All right, let me transition into this. And by the way, the top 5 college teams, who cares? It's the same group of dudes, man. If you're Temple, let's just use Temple, San Diego State, you have no chance of ever winning a national championship. 0. You could go undefeated. If you were Temple or San Diego State, you would have to play the NFC East, okay, for your non-conference to have a shot. It's the only way. Because it's by committee. They're not letting anybody into that party. That's why that Fiesta Bowl set up. It's $17 million. It's like, go away money. Here's $17 million. Go away. Get away from us. They'd rather give you the money to go to that bowl game instead of having you in the semifinals. Here's $17 million. Go away. Yeah, but I want to play. No. We don't. No. You think since people were talking last year about Cincinnati playing in the national championship semifinals? Really? COVID could have did that. They had a chance to allow it, but they didn't. I thought they maybe were going to do it. Here, and as I move on, know this. Can you guys name me the last non-Power 5 team to win a national championship? Do you know who it is? Here, a second. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. 1985. Brigham Young. And they had to play in the Holiday Bowl. And they had to play a 6-6 Michigan team. So in theory, they beat a 6-7 team to win a national title. College football said after 85, that was never happening again. And it's never happened again. No non-Power 5 team has won a national championship since 1985. And people keep looking, well, maybe one day this will be the – no, it hasn't happened since 85, over 35 years ago. It's not happening. They've rigged the game, college football. All right, let's go on and go over to Carson Wentz here. So we talked to Frank Reich yesterday, the head football coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And I got a really good sense of the personal relationship that Frank has with Carson. I got to tell you something. Until I had seen and talked to Frank, and I've had Frank on my national radio show a few times, but until I saw in his eyes the personal relationship that he has with Carson, I always thought his relationship with Nick Foles was better. And there were a couple triggering comments that he gave yesterday. You should go back and listen to that interview, and I hope you do. JAKIB Media, go on their phenomenal website with all the great shows and all the things we have. That Frank Wright interview is there. You got to listen to it and listen to some of the things that I'm saying here. As soon as the season's over, he was the number one target. I know there was conversation that, you know what? I know this, and I'll tell you this. Jim Irsay had reached out to Andrew Luck personally, see if he wanted to come back and play. Andrew had said, I'm done. It's finished. This is it for me. I don't want to do it. And get this. You know how cool the Colts were? They were still paying him on his contract with his years remaining. That's how much they really love Andrew Luck. And Andrew Luck was torn between, saying no. He didn't want to say no to the guy, but he didn't want to play either. That's what Frank kind of hinted to me on a private phone call. So it was always going to be Wentz. Now, how early in the process is yet to be determined. Did they call immediately after the regular season? That's what I was led to believe. That this conversation started really early in the process. Which leads me to believe this. Jeffrey Loria and Howie Roseman had already determined and decided that they were going to part ways with either Doug or Wentz or both. I don't think they really were going to get rid of Doug. I think that the Wentz process got rid of Doug. I think when he saw that they were moving in the direction to move him. Remember, because the Eagles came out and basically said this, we're pretty good with Doug. Things are going good. Remember, they were having these ongoing conversations with him. And it looked favorable for him staying in Philly, right? But as that deal started getting closer and it looked like the Eagles and Colts were going to consummate the deal, I personally think that's when the Nick Sirianni element came into the conversation as well. Well, why don't we bring a guy in that, again, we just clean house here. If we're getting rid of Wentz, why not get rid of the head coach too? It's a pretty tough dynamic with a guy that won a Super Bowl, though. Okay? It really is. And Doug was kind of tied. And, boy, I'll tell you what, Doug did everything he could publicly to back Carson Wentz. But eventually, I think that he just got too big on his shoulders. And I think the weight just carried him between the owner and the GM banging on him every single day. I think that played a toll on it. And that's what got him his exit papers out of Philly. These guys were plotting from day one to get Wentz out of there. They wanted to get out from under the contract. They wanted, and I'm going to get to why I think he's going to have success in Indy. And the Colts were open to having Wentz. Once Phillip Rivers made it easy, because you got to remember something about, I don't think you guys know the relationship that Frank Wright, the head coach, and Rivers had when Frank was the offensive coordinator in San Diego, when the Chargers were still in San Diego. He was the OC there. And some of the most productive seasons that Phillip Rivers has ever had was under Frank Wright. And they did win 11 ball games last year with Phillip Rivers. As chaotic sometimes as it seemed when he was throwing the ball down the field, there was still success there. They won 11 ball games. They were a pretty good football team last year, right? A couple plays here or there in the postseason, I don't know. They were good. But it made it easy on Irsay and Frank to go like this. Oh, you want to retire? Okay, I'm done. They were probably hinting to him too. Hey, look, do you want to play? Do you not want to play? They're probably giving him that face. And when that happened, man, they went knee-deep into Carson Wentz. Frank's got a relationship. It's not going to take much to rekindle it. And on Carson's, I would think Carson Wentz, probably when he heard Colts, he probably flipped. O-line, Chris Ballard, the GM. Defense is good. Special teams. Their cap is balanced. It's more of a homey type city, Indianapolis, compared to Philly. Remember something, this guy played at North Dakota State, not Philly. That must have been like landing on the moon when he went to Philadelphia. Must have been a different world, dude. Philly, hey, man, no one cares what you did yesterday. They only care what you're going to do tomorrow. Okay, you can win a Super Bowl. No one cares. It's a small version of Yankee fan. Nobody cares you got all them titles. What are you going to do tomorrow? You suck right now. That's how it is, dog. Okay? Attention span of a gnat. He probably flipped when he said, really, Frank? Then Frank got on the phone with him. Hey, dude, we're going to make this happen. We're probably texting. And what Carson was probably thinking, man, I got a guy who believes in me. I got an organization who believes in me. They probably told Wentz, dude, you come in here, you're in here for the long haul. You're not in here for a long minute. This is going to be a long haul here, man. We're financially strapped to you. You're our guy. We're not going to be bringing guys in to compete with you for the starting quarterback. This is your gig. Frank probably made that very clear. You're our guy. In Philly, what'd they do? They went up and traded up to get Jalen Hurts because they wanted, what was it? They wanted a safety belt in case the kid imploded. In my opinion, in Philly, they panicked. When they saw Wentz was regressing, they panicked. Everyone started grabbing a life preserver. They started panicking. I personally think he's going to have great success because of the most important thing that you can do for a player. Belief. Frank probably sat him down and read it to him. Dude, I know what happened. Frank's probably watched every single game film of the Eagles last year. Probably watched everything he did wrong. And knowing Frank, the way his demeanor is, pointed it out to him. What'd you see here? Instead of saying, you suck here, like the Eagles were, and doing it publicly. Frank's not going to go public and talk trash on Wentz. He's not going to have the pressure of Chris Ballard banging on him because how he wants to get his name out in the Philadelphia Inquirer. Chris Ballard, how many times have you seen that guy do interviews? Very seldom. He sits in the back like Kevin Colbert with the Steelers. The guy's not trying to be a hero GM. He's just trying to help the coach. Because when you help the coach, you help your own resume. Remember something. As well as the coach does, that's your resume on what the coach does, what the players do. I mean, when you look at Ozzie Newsome, do people remember he was a Hall of Fame tight end? Or do you just know that what he did in winning those 2 Super Bowls as the Baltimore Ravens general manager? That's all you know of him? Well, you're missing out on who he was too. Guy was a phenomenal player, and he played at Alabama for Bear Bryant. So this guy had Bryant, Marty Schottenheimer, won all them games, became a Hall of Fame football player, then became a Hall of Fame general manager. Ozzie could go in the Hall of Fame as a GM too, man. All them players he drafted. Look at that. Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, Suggs, Lamar Jackson, Jamal Lewis. Go down the list, man. Bryant McKinney. There were legendary dudes on that football team that he drafted himself. But he was never out front. You ever see Ozzie do an interview? Not like this dude. Yeah, well, I'm like, man, Carson Wentz is going to have success because they're setting the environment up for him to have success. They're making it so when he steps into that building, it's a transition where he's going to walk in and know it's his room, know it's his house. There's no quarter. Don't get quarter. I think they have JAKIB Brissett there, if I'm not mistaken, the kid that was up in New England. They gave $17 million 2 years to. I don't know. I'm not sure if he's still in the building or not. He's a good backup quarterback for them. I know this. Seattle tried to offer a third round draft choice for him a couple of years back. They said no. I like actually JAKIB Brissett. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he could play in this league. I think he's right in that room with Tyrod Taylor. All right. So I do think he's going to have success. All right. We're going to talk college and pro football with our friend Chris Landry from Landry Football. We'll do that next. You keep it right here on the National Football Show.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. and Krause every Saturday night from 6 till 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at ibew98.org.
The light from a star can take millions of years to reach Earth. So when you look at a star, you're looking back in time. But I see the future. I see exploration and courage. I see my country finding new horizons out there. And I see giant leaps making a comeback. I see myself. The future is where I'll make history.
Jody Mack, the legendary sports talker, joins forces with NFL insider John McMullen. Start your morning with Johnny Mack and Jody Mack across the JAKIB Media Network.
And welcome back to the National Football Show. We really appreciate everybody stepping on here with us. And on top of that, it was really great catching up with Dave Wannstedt in the first hour. Just a quick programming note. Tomorrow, Cornelius Bennett and one of the legendary players of all time will step in with us. And, you know, he is one of the greatest Heisman Trophy winners. And I so love him. And he played his football at Florida State. And when we get him on tomorrow and we talk to Charlie Ward, I'm going to ask him why he decided not to take Dennis Green up on his offer to at least work out with him. I believe when he was the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. We bring our friend in, Chris Landry. He joins us now here from LandryFootball.com. Please, folks, check it out. It is one of the greatest websites of all time. When you go on it, he's got college and pro broke down like anybody else. Chris, I appreciate you doing this, brother.
Hey, good to be with you, man. Good to see you and catch up with you, my friend.
Absolutely. Hey, how do you think that may have played out for Charlie if he had taken Coach Green up? I mean, you know, the quarterbacks that we see in today's game, he probably fits today's game a little bit better than what that game was back then, because we still had the guys with the 7-step drops, you know, Chris. I mean, there wasn't a lot of guys that were moving out in the perimeter. So maybe him going to the Knicks was probably best for him, because the league wasn't set up back then for guys with that skill set, was it?
Yeah, and I do agree with you that he would have been a great fit in today's game. You know, he liked he obviously loved basketball. He made a good living. You got the guaranteed money. I guess he did the right thing for him. Selfishly, I always thought, because I was running the combine at the time and we had him in there, and you got a great opportunity. Even then, I thought he'd have a chance to be really good. So selfishly, I wanted to see him play football, but you correct me if I'm wrong. He was I guess a marginal player in the NBA. He was okay. He wasn't spectacular ever, Chris. But he wasn't
But he was a spectacular football player.
And he could have been. He could have been a special quarterback, much more so than he was in the NBA. But I don't know if that money-wise, he may have been better off just being that. I don't know what ninth guy on the Knicks bench or whatever, and get the guaranteed money. So I can't blame him for that. I just selfishly wanted to see him play football.
Absolutely. So I'm with you there. I think he took the guaranteed cash bet. That leads me into this question here. I selfishly want to see how this Tebow story plays itself out. Now, I don't get where people are. He's not going in there to compete against Trevor Lawrence. He's from Jacksonville. He went to Nice High School. It's Gator country. I don't know, Chris. Maybe you see it completely different. When people say taking roster spots away, this league is known for coaches giving the buddy treatment. Hey, this guy worked with me in Philadelphia. I'm going to hire him because he's my guy and he knows what I'm expecting. And Dave Wannstedt said something really interesting. Meyer's going to bring in guys from Ohio State and Florida because those guys are going to tell those current Jaguar guys what the culture is expected inside that locker room. And Dave said that Tebow's importance is going to be more on what the expectations are for the players inside that locker room. Is that fair?
I think it can be, but I will also say this, though, Dan. You know this, that leadership stuff that people talk about, that doesn't work if you're a third, fourth tight end. You know how that is? It's just like, you go in. I mean, he was a alpha dog leader at Florida. He was the best player in their team.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think we're going to know the answer. Maybe this is the entry towards, being part of the organization at some point down the road outside of, playing. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have expectations that he's going to be really good. Heck, we wanted him back in the day to maybe consider doing the tight end thing and working on special teams. I thought that was his strength. And, all right, you might have a package, short yardage, goal line, but he quarterback, I'm quarterback, and he wasn't good enough. I mean, just call it what it is. And, people talk like great athlete. Well, he was a great competitor. He's not like people have asked me, is he going to be like Taysom Hill of the Saints? No, Taysom Hill's a much better at. Taysom Hill runs sub 4.5 and fast and can do – and Taysom Hill's not a good enough passer. He's still a better passer than Tebow. But, look, if Tim could do anything, he hasn't made the team. He's not. We'll see the contract. I don't think he's going to make any money. And
league minimum.
He's not going to. If you got to make, you got to make the team. Is he going to be on the roster? I don't know that. I mean, this is not a certainty that he makes the 53-man roster. In fact, I would say it's no more than 50-50, maybe less. But if he does, fine. I do think it is something to the effect of you have guys that you're familiar with, and I don't know that he's a culture changer. But I do think he's somebody that he sets an example. He's somebody that, and I hate to put it this way, this, somebody that's in the locker room that he may not be the leader and some of those guys on Jack, but he's somebody that can go back to Urban and say, we got some problems. I just don't know exactly how this is playing out, but I don't have great expectations, but there's really nothing lost here. I don't think it's going to disrupt the team. Now, look, this. If the guy can't play and he's earned the spot, and that just doesn't fly in this league. But I don't see it going that way. I really don't. We're going to have to wait and see how it plays out.
I agree with you. I think people are making more of this thing. We're talking about the 50th guy on a 53-man roster here.
Mm-hmm.
We're not talking about a guy, the 1%ers that are up at the top of the roster here. So I agree with you. Let's move into this offseason. And, Chris, I like to do it this way. I don't really talk about the draft per se. I talk about the complete package of the offseason with the draft and free agency and the teams that do the least amount of movement. And the reason I say that, I had Bruce Arians on with me a couple days ago, and I was telling him, so you bring back all 22 guys plus AB, and you get your coordinators back. I mean, I don't know how the Bucs don't win the offseason just with that. And they get Kyle Trask in the second round. Maybe the potential guy that could end up being the heir apparent for Brady. I don't know. But all I'm saying is, how do you evaluate teams, and what teams did you see this offseason that you thought got better?
Well, I think you start with the better teams. I think Tampa is that. Now, the other thing I would add is that team, the Bucs weren't the best team in the league all last year. They were the end of the year. So I throw in the fact that they were just starting to hit their stride at the end of the year. Now you don't flip a switch and start over where you left off, but that team has everything it needs going forward. What you don't know is, are you going to, a couple of pass rushers go down? Do you have enough depth there? You know how that is. We'll figure that out in November. But they've got everything you look for. I thought it was interesting. Kansas City, as good as they are, attack the offensive line. So let's start with the good teams. And, okay, those are the ones you have to look at. The Buffalo improved themselves in some areas. Then there's some teams that are just not very good that are maybe starting to turn the corner, or maybe not starting to turn the corner, but maybe you're just starting to get a little bit better. I think they're in the different categories. But when I look at, say, the AFC, I do think the Browns roster is getting better. I think you throw them in with Buffalo. I think I think the Patriots will be better in some areas. I don't know if they're like good enough to beat Buffalo. We'll see. But I think to me, Buffalo, Cleveland, Lake Erie stretch there, and I think it's just a chase with the Chiefs and see how that plays out. I don't know in the South that anybody's made a big mark, but I do think Tennessee's the team to beat. In the NFC, it's like, gosh, can anybody get anything done in the NFC East? You don't need to be any good. I think the Giants made some improvements. We'll see if that's enough to at least be, somebody's got to win that division. I don't know that it's going to do much. Obviously the whole story with Rodgers and Green Bay is up in the air. You got to think that maybe Nagy and Pace bought themselves some time with Justin Fields. Even if he's not great this year, they can sell it that's something going forward. And then I think the Niners are going to be better and did some good things. So those are some teams, but there's some other teams I thought did good jobs, but I don't know if they're, what I'd say, hey, absolutely threaten the playoffs.
Let me go back to Lake Erie here. Let me go back to Cleveland here. You got Chubb. You got Kareem Hunt. They got Clowney on the other side of the ball in free agency. They've done a really nice job in the draft. I thought Dorsey brought some guys in, and I thought this new current group brought some more guys in. Odell Beckham, once he got injured, I thought the team took off in the second or probably in the midpoint of the season. In the third quarter poll of the year, I thought they got better. I thought that Baker Mayfield showed me some leadership. I thought he was a high school cheerleader. The way that he was acting kind of didn't have maturity, but he shocked me, Chris, and he actually showed me towards the end. And I think that's why they picked that option up on him and gave him the 18-8 because they saw something. They won a boatload of games. They got to have one of the better rosters. But are you buying that Mayfield's the guy that could take him to the Super Bowl?
I was impressed with the job that Kevin Stefanski did with him. I think at the quarterback position, there are a lot of guys that can make plays. It's about the plays you don't make. And you just hit it. I thought Baker was very immature as a young guy. Can make some splash plays. You don't win that way. You win by making good decisions, getting your team into the right play, a better play, making the smart decision, live for another play, and sometimes you got to punt it away and then get back out there and don't kill yourself because he's done that in the first couple of years. I thought that improved a great deal. It's not a certainly no guarantee, but I want to see that continue to get better because I like what they've started to build on defense, and I like their ability to run the football. And, right now they got probably a more complete roster than Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's got to fix some things on the offensive line. And if they can tinker with that, that team – now, that's an example right there of a team that fell apart. It was a little bit fool's gold at 11-0, right? But, man, you lose Bud Dupree, you lose a couple of them, and then you just collapse. But they'll still be competitive. Baltimore will still be competitive. But I think Cleveland has enough personnel, and I think the thing that they've done is they've got the whole culture in their play a little bit better, meaning they're a little bit more disciplined. And one of the areas I worry a little bit about is can the young receivers step up? I think Odell sometimes – I thought Dorsey did a good job with talent. Dorsey did not do a good job of putting the right chemistry together. Yep. And I think that is something that Kevin has done very well to take this team to the next level, which obviously they couldn't do, do previously.
Let me take you to Chicago here. And you listen, you evaluate a lot of the college kids, all the college kids that are going to be potential prospects for these NFL teams. I have always looked at Ohio State, and I have always looked at the quarterback position there as a colossal failure. In the 132 years of the program's success, they've never produced an NFL quarterback. Art Schlichter, Craig Krenzel, guys like that, sure, okay. I mean, but these are not world beaters. And where I go with this, Chris, is great O-linemen, great running backs, great D linemen, great linebackers, great secondary guys. The whole area of the roster except that one position. And when I hear Ryan Day trying to sell me Justin Fields, this is the same guy with Urban Meyer that had Joe Burrow in the room, in the quarterback room, and they told him he wasn't good enough to play at Ohio State, and he had a transfer. They had the guy. He was there, and they couldn't see it. Why am I to believe that this guy's going to change that trend, and Fields is the guy going forward, that he's going to be the best quarterback in Ohio State history? Why?
Well, the thing about it, though, if you think about this, how many schools can you say that about? Like, if you look at it, what quarterback ever came out of Michigan that did a whole lot? Still Brady, Tennessee, Manning. It's like, now, you went to a school where they just churned them out, every one of those guys year in year. But most didn't. Think about that. Most didn't. And it's like, I was thinking about that because people have said that. So I learned you don't scout the helmet, you scout the player. I think
you're right, Chris. I had Kelly, Kozar, Testaverde.
Yeah, all those guys, and Mark Rick was the water boy, and he brought the helmet in there. But my point is the game has changed now. Alabama's another. Now Alabama had Namath and Stabler, and then old time had Starr, but people still say this. Well, these Alabama quarterbacks don't do it. Well, they just started throwing the football at Alabama. I mean, that's what. So now here's the thing I would say is you're right. And Joe Burrow, the first year at LSU wasn't much. Joe Brady comes in. No, it's a fair point. I would just say that if you take that, you would assume. I mean, in fact, Brady wasn't a whole lot at Michigan. I mean, couldn't beat out Drew Henson, and so I wonder if. I would say that maybe in future years that might change because look at what they're doing at Ohio State offensively. The whole Jim Tressel and all those guys, Greg Krenzel, they didn't throw the football. They had to like pulling teeth to throw the football. They didn't need to. They were like what Saban did when he had McElroy and McCarron. And McCarron wasn't bad. He was a solid backup in the league, still is. But now you're seeing the college game change. So I think you're going to see a whole lot of people start to do a lot of things. There's Oklahoma's got 2. Cal's got 2. Remember.
I would say this to you too, Chris.
Nobody has more than 2.
Check this out. I told somebody this. I go, if you want to really know a college that has produced quarterbacks, how about Purdue?
The history. Greasy, Dawson, on and on and on. Even like Jim Everett, who maybe was an underachiever, but physically gifted. There's no doubt about that. George went there for a while. You're right. And Breeze, and yet, and now Breeze is gone, and some of those, so they don't have them now. But no, that is absolutely true. Cal, I remember when people said, you can't get a Jeff Tedford quarterback. None of those guys work out. Well, then you miss on Aaron Rodgers because he had 4 or 5 of the. Kyle Bowler didn't work.
Yeah.
David Carr went. Well, maybe it's not because Jeff Tedford coached him. Maybe it's circumstances around him that sucked. And then so I think there's sometimes there are other things. I think you can kind of trick yourself into that. And then the other way, it's like, well, you wouldn't say like. All those quarterbacks are like, I will say this, Jimbo Fisher's quarterbacks, look at how many of those guys got drafted high and how successful they were. And none of them worked out. Only Winston but Christian Ponder, EJ Manuel, go on. And then, he had Jamarcus for a little bit, and then, he's got Kellum. So I think it's an interesting situation, but I think I look at the skill set and the capacity, willingness to learn, the leadership skills. That's what I look for. I think Justin can be fine, but I think like any of these guys, how good is the team around them going to be? That's going to be the key. I think Sam Darnold can play. I don't know. I know he did nothing with the Jets, and maybe it's because of him to some degree, but it has a lot to do with what's around him. So we don't know what he is. So I'll say this. Let's hope that Zach Wilson is not in the same situation 4 years from now where we're saying, I don't know what he is. He hasn't done anything, but the team sucks, and they got to draft another quarterback again.
You know what, Chris, finally here, the one thing that I will say is I think the one guy that has now given all these quarterbacks a reprieve has been Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill gets blown out in Miami. Joe Philbin couldn't do anything with him. Adam Gase couldn't do anything with him. He just signed a $29.5 million contract in Tennessee, and now he's constantly going to the playoffs. 2 years ago, he goes to the AFC Championship game. And if I'm Matt Rule and I'm Carolina and I see that they even ruined Namath. Namath walked out of there with plastic knees in New York. So to me, I think
Richard Todd,
That's just like the landfill. So it is sometimes the organization.
Absolutely. And let's look at Tannehill. He played like 1 year a quarterback. He was a receiver at A&M. So it's a late bloomer. Well, things started to settle down a little bit. And you know what? That's why you take a flyer on Mitchell Trubisky. Because he didn't play a lot of football. He was overdrafted. Now, is he mentally tough enough, and will he be in a good enough situation? He's in a good situation in Buffalo as a backup. But you know what? If he plays a little bit, we have a preseason, maybe he gets a contract. Maybe he could be the Tannehill of 3-4 years from now. I wouldn't give up on some of those guys. But was he ready? No. Did they overdraft him? Yes. And if you say, because I draft him third, well, he's got to be all of that. Well, he's not. You got to develop him. It really is how you cook the meal, how you raise the guy in the league. And very often you just don't do the ones that do the best job of that. I would say that probably the guy that has the furthest to go is Trey Lance out of this past draft, but he's in the best situation. So you know what? He might have the best chance because better team and the coaching, I think, is going to be really good.
I do too. Chris Landry. Don't forget LandryFootball.com. When you go on this website, Chris breaks it down. And for me, especially a guy like me that's not internet savvy, it's easy for me to click and easy for me to go and look at my favorite football players, college and pro, talk about the coaches, both college and pro. It's one of the best websites. That's why we so appreciate every time he finds time for us. Chris, I love you. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. Love you too. Take care, buddy. Anytime.
You got it. That's my friend Chris Landry. Again, LandryFootball.com. We'll take a brief time out. You keep it right here on the National Football Show.
Welcome to the Wildwoods, the perfect place where you can safely do everything or nothing at all. Catch a wave, take a nap, go for a drive, grab a bite. It's your vacation, and we're doing everything we can to make it a safe one. The Wildwoods. Your vacation, your way.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
The International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 98, is a proud sponsor of The Labor Show with J. and Krause every Saturday night from 6 to 8 p.m. IBEW Local 98's highly trained and superbly skilled electricians are the best in the business, setting the highest safety standards in the electrical industry. So when you're planning your next industrial, commercial, or residential project, choose an IBEW Local 98 union contractor. Learn more at IBEW98.org.
The light from a star can take millions of years to reach Earth. So when you look at a star, you're looking back in time. But I see the future. I see exploration and courage. I see my country finding new horizons out there. And I see giant leaps making a comeback. I see myself. The future is where I'll make history.
JAKIB! Jody Mack, the legendary sports talker, joins forces with NFL insider John McMullen. Start your morning with Johnny Mack and Jody Mack across the JAKIB Media Network.
Welcome back. National Football Show with Dan Sileo. Programming note again. Tomorrow we'll have former Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward. And a really interesting story why he chose not to play in the NFL versus going to the NBA. Like Chris Landry said, he was okay. Guaranteed money. And I think he played over 10 years for the Knicks. But everybody always wonders what could have been. Did he have any regrets at playing in the National Football League? Dennis Green wanted to draft him in the first round, and Charlie said, don't draft me. I'm going to play basketball. This guy won the Heisman, and get this, he won a national championship at Florida State. And he decided to do this. Now, I'm going to play basketball. He played basketball and football, obviously, at Florida State, and went to the playoffs, did all that stuff like the NCAA tournament when he was there. I think Leonard Hamilton may have even coached him. But, yeah, Charlie, man, he's a very interesting guy. And how about, would you want – it's always crazy when you're talking about a player who lost Super Bowls. And, I tell Jim Kelly this all the time. Obviously, our Kane blood runs deep. And I always say this when I bring Jim Kelly on our show. We'll get Jim on again. And I say, Jim, the winner of 4 straight AFC championships. And Jim always appreciates that because you have to know how hard it is even to get to that game, let alone win that game 4 times. Yes, they lost those 4 Super Bowls. But do you think you'll ever see, including the Patriot dynasty, you think you'll ever see a team go to 4 straight Super Bowls? Let alone 3. Right? I think a team went to 3 Super Bowls. What was that? It was the Dolphins, right? Went to 3 straight. They lost to Dallas. Then they won 2 in a row. One of those teams was undefeated. And so, like, that Dolphin team back in the day with Bob Greasy was, I think they went to 3 straight. But going to 4 straight Super Bowls, you think with the salary cap being the way it is, way more difficult to keep your team intact than it was back then. Remember, you didn't have free agency back then. So if you had guys that were young, you were going to have your core group of guys back. That's not the case. That's why they're making such a gigantic deal out of the Buccaneers bringing all 22 plus AB back. And, I mean, you just don't see that. So Cornelius Bennett, he lost 4 Super Bowls in a row with that Buffalo Bills team. Remember who was on that team? I mean, some of the greatest players. Darryl Talley was on that team. Bruce Smith was on that team. Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, Andre Reed, James Lofton. Man, there were so many phenomenal football players that were on that team. Ken Hull, the center, who's considered a Hall of Fame type player. So many great football players. Marv Levy, the Hall of Fame coach. We're all putting everything together, each and every single. Cornelius Bennett, like I said, was probably the second best defensive player that was on that football team during that time, next to Bruce Smith. And he loses 4. He leaves. He ends up leaving Buffalo. Then he goes to Atlanta, and they lose a Super Bowl to the Denver Broncos. He's been considered for the Hall of Fame like the last 5 years, but this last year they ended up passing over him when it came to being a finalist. He's got 7 Pro Bowls to his name. He's got 2 All-American teams at Alabama. I believe he's a Lombardi winner too. The Lombardi Trophy given to the best defensive player in college football. I think he played for Ray Perkins when Ray left the Giants and became the head coach after Bear Bryant left. And I think he played for Ray. And he's one of my dearest friends. And I don't know why he's not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So those will be our guests tomorrow. We'll talk and figure it out because we need to get Cornelius Bennett into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I mean, how about this? When you try to tell me and you look at Jason Taylor, for instance, with the Dolphins, who was just put in, Jason Taylor's not better than Biscuit Bennett. There's no way. There's absolutely no way Fred Taylor's better than Cornelius Bennett. There's no way. There's absolutely no way he's better than him. Cornelius Bennett was one of the best players to ever play in the National Football League. And because he lost 5 Super Bowls, they're holding that against him. Should they? We'll talk tomorrow about that scenario there. You know, there was a story that came out today. Now, I don't know if this is like a joke or not. So Jason Licht was asked the question. He was talking on a podcast. Jason Light's the general manager of the Buccaneers. Done a brilliant job putting that roster together. And how about this? Doing a brilliant job at keeping that roster together. And he was asked the question, hey, man, how many more years do you think Brady has to play? And Jason Licht goes, well, you know, I was just having lunch with Brady the other day. Brady was kind of hinting that maybe he could play until he's 50. You know, there's a part of me that does this. Okay, so Brady's closer to my age and he is my daughter's age. And I'm thinking to myself, well, could he play till he's 50? Could Brady play until he's 50? Well, the quarterbacks don't get hurt. And that's why I think you see a lot of these consecutive game streaks, like you saw with Eli, you saw with Peyton. Brady, outside of that 1 year where he ended up going down and they had to put Matt Castle in, they still finished second. I think they won 11-5 that year, still even with Matt Castle. I think the Dolphins won the division that year with Chad Pennington, if I'm not mistaken. But could Brady play that long? Did you see? Hey, watch this. What we saw his final year in New England, we all went like this. Okay, maybe he's coming to the end. Uh-oh, we're wrong again. Brady goes out. I think he threw for 40 touchdowns this year, right? 40 touchdowns at 43. I mean, dude, really? This guy's a 40-year-old dude throwing 40 touchdowns, and you're like, man, we're never going to see anything like that ever again. And could he play until he's 50? I think the Bucs would love him. You know what I always thought, you know, and I told people, obviously I'm a Buccaneer guy, see it on the wall back there, or wait over here, okay? Man, can you imagine at Raymond James, you got hosed because of the COVID-19. You couldn't have all the fans filling Raymond James, watching the GOAT play. This year, you're going to get an opportunity to have the entire place with 75,000 fans at Raymond James, defending Super Bowl champions. And when Brady runs out and they drop the banner, Brady's going to run out in front of a full house for the first time at Raymond James with Buccaneer fans, and they're going to be able to officially welcome him in to Tampa as a Buck. You couldn't do it a year ago because of the pandemic. I know that towards the Super Bowl, they ended up putting fans, but those weren't Buck fans at the Super Bowl. You understand that season ticket holders have nothing to do with postseason football. The league runs that. Those are all league tickets. You get a chance to buy postseason tickets. That's not part of your entire package when your team makes it to the postseason. Like, you're not entitled Super Bowl tickets. You're not. So this year is going to be kind of like the first time, and there's going to be 17 games this year. Man, you can't get any better than that. So that's one thing I'm looking forward to this year, is having the Buck fans look at Tom Brady for the first time and you're going to actually be able to cheer the dude because you're going to have a full house. Think of all the merchandise and the money that you ended up losing because of the pandemic. You made that investment in that guy, and you weren't able to capitalize on it at all in any way. Even the city with bars and Sunday football parties. This year coming up, I think we're all going to have a full house for all NFL football and college games. All right. Hey, don't forget tomorrow, 4 to 6, it's going to be the dropping and unveiling of the National Football League schedule. So we'll be hot and heavy into that. If you want to get this, you missed any of this show, do me a favor, go over to JAKIB Media's website. You can watch it, watch all the interviews that we've done over the last couple of weeks here. And do me a favor, I'll catch you tomorrow at 4 to 6. Only place you can catch the National Football Show is right here on JAKIB Media.